she. It's time to rest now. Let the day drift quietly behind you. Close your eyes, if you like, or simply soften your gaze. Feel the hush of evening settle around you. A hush like soft wool across your shoulders, like distant bells fading into the velvet dark. There's no need to do anything now. Just breathe. Let your breath fall in slow, gentle waves, in and out, like a breeze passing through linen curtains. The world outside can wait. You are safe, here wrapped in warmth. We will journey. Not far, no. Just to a quiet corner of a medieval town, where stars are stitched not in sky, but in thread. Our story tonight begins. In a room no larger than a bread cart, tucked behind an old weaving hall. There, in the town of Eslinth, just beyond the northern roads, a young apprentice named Elsha is leaning close to her embroidery hoop. Her needle, fine and silver as moonlight, dips and lifts, dips and lifts, like a boat crossing a midnight sea. The only light comes from a single beeswax candle, its flame flickering softly against the curved wooden walls. There's a hearth at her back, where dry oak crackles and settles, sending threads of warmth. The room smells of lavender tucked in the rafters, of sun-washed wool, and the faintest trace of ash. Elsha's hands, not from tiredness, no, but from reverence. She is sewing the fox star tonight, just as her grandmother taught her. Start with the tail, the old woman used to whisper. 4 foxes never go where they mean to. And so, with soft breath and steady fingers, Elsha threads gold into indigo. Each tug a moment stilled in time. Outside, the wind murmurs beneath the eaves. It slides through moss-covered shingles, carrying the scent of peat smoke and river reeds. Somewhere, a watchman's bell rings distant and low, marking the hour before midnight. And still, this wasn't just embroidery. Not to her. Not to her grandmother. This was mapping. You see, in the 13th century, some believed that stars didn't just govern the sky. 2 crops, 2 rivers, to the wombs of sheep and women alike, and to those who could listen closely. They whispered of color, of shapes, of patterns, to be sewn into cloth that might protect or guide. Elsha's grandmother, Old Maeve, had been one of the last known thread scryers in the county. Not allowed. The abbey wouldn't have liked it, but women from the village came all the same to learn when to plant onions, to bless a birth, to ease a restless night. And Maeve would take out her thread box and her stars and hum. Now, long after her passing, Elsha sits where Maeve once sat. The same stool, worn smooth at the edges. The same scrap of vellum tucked beneath the wool, showing the old star diagrams drawn in ink made from oak galls and iron salts, and each constellation to a design. the fox, the heron, the sister's crown. Elsha whispers their names as she sews, as if naming them might wake them from the fabric. Each name, a breath, each breath, a lullaby. She murmurs, tracing the tail of the fox. Guide lost, travelers, guide the sleepless, guide me. She closes her eyes for a moment. The hearth crackles softly behind her, and the stars sewn beneath her hands seem to shimmer, not with light, but with warmth. As a child, she used to lie on the loom room floor, watching Mavis' feet, or heartbeats, or waves coming home. And now, years later, Elsha weaves too. Not on looms, but with thread and wool and soft candlelight. She weaves stories, she weaves prayers, she weaves stars. Above her, in the real sky beyond the rafters, the constellations arc slowly overhead. But Elsha doesn't need to look up. She knows them by feel now, by memory, by thread. And somewhere, across the silent town, a baby stops crying. A traveler finds his way by moonlight. A field of barley turns ever so slightly greener in the cold. Perhaps it's chance. Perhaps not. Perhaps the stars are speaking. And Elsa is simply listening. Her needle pauses. She snips the thread. The sound barely more than a whisper. Then chooses the next color silver white, like frost on a morning window. The sister's crown. 7 stars, curved like a smile. And as her hands move gently across the cloth, the room grows even quieter, even stiller, as if time itself has curled into sleep beside her. You may rest now, too. Let Elsha's gentle stitching carry you deeper into the night. Feel the hush, the warmth, the softness of it all. You are safe here, surrounded by stars, stitched into a story, held gently by thread and sky alike. The night deepens in length, and the silence folds gently over rooftops like a cloak drawn around a sleeping child. The old stone streets, once bustling with wheelbarrows and bare feet, now lie quiet, slicked with dew, echoing only the faint drip of water from eaves. Above, she's climbed their slow arc. The fox, just stitched in gold thread below, its tail curling toward the sister's crown, as it does every midsummer night. Inside her room, Elsha lifts her hand from the wool and exhales a slow breath. She sets the embroidery hoop aside with care, wrapping the edges in soft linen so the stars may sleep. Too, she rises, her fingers gently brushing the folds of her skirts, and pads barefoot across the wooden floor. The hearth crackles lower now. A quiet murmur of glowing embers and settling ash. She adds a single split log, not to wake the fire, but simply to keep it dreaming beside her. In the corner sits her grandmother's chest, low, walnut dark. Elsa kneels before it, undoes the iron latch, and lifts the lid with a soft creak. Inside, nestled like feathers, lie bundles of thread, silks and wools, spun and dyed with care, in hues the world no longer remembers. Some were colored with woad leaves, which turned blue only after meeting the air. Others with madder root, which slept brown in water, but woke red in sun. And still others Elsha's favorites dyed from weld and bedstraw, yielding warm yellows, soft rusts, like harvest fields under cloudlight. She lifts a bundle, the thread wound tight around a bone shuttle, and inhales deeply. There's still the faintest scent of beeswax and rose hips. Maeve had always believed that colors carried memory, that the thread remembered where it came from, and whispered stories into the cloth. With quiet hands, Elsha tucks the shuttle into her apron pocket. Tomorrow, she will begin a new map. The Huron constellation, which guards rivers and dreams. But for now, she turns once more to the window. It's a small, round window, barely the size of a dinner plate. But through it, she can see just enough. The edge of the chapel steeple, the chimney smoke of the baker's house, and, most importantly, the sky, a stretch of stars, clear and cold and endless. They twinkle, not brightly, but like distant candles, flickering with purpose. Her eyes trace the patterns automatically. There the crown. There the stitcher's hand, reaching eastward. The hidden one. The lost star. It didn't appear on most maps. It shifted slightly, year by year, and Maeve always said it would only stop moving when someone stitched its name into wool once again. Elsa wasn't sure she believed that, but she liked the thought that a star might wait for someone to notice it, to listen. A soft knock sounds at her door. Just once, barely more than the tap of a feather. She rises and opens it to find old Raylan, the town's lamplighter. His hands are sooty and wrinkled, his beard like bundled wool. He holds a bundle wrapped in brown cloth. From Marin, he says, voice low so as not to wake the night. She's due next week. Wants the baby's name sewn in Erla before the sister's crown leaves the sky. Elsha bows her head gently and accepts the cloth. Inside, she knows, will be a small christening cloak, lined in fleece. I'll have it by moon's turn, she whispers. Rallan nods once, then disappears back into the darkness. His lantern swinging like a slow-moving star of its own. Elsha closes the door, and the room welcomes her again. Still warm, still quiet, still full of sleeping thread. She lays the bundle gently by her embroidery stool, but does not sit again just yet. Instead, she reaches for the small brass bell by the hearth, the one Maeve used to chime each night before sleep. Not loud, just once, a soft ring, to let the stars know someone is listening. She rings it now. Ting. The sound is silver thin and vanishes almost at once into the stillness. But something lingers, a feeling like eyes, watching kindly from above. She curls up on the small daybed beneath the rafters, pulling a quilt of old woven scraps. Each patch has a story, a constellation, a name. She lies back to the soft crickets beyond the shutter, to the fire murmuring like an old friend, to the whisper of wind curling through the chimney throat. And she wonders, as sleep begins to drift its veil across her mind, what the stars will say tomorrow. What dreams may come when one's fingers follow their patterns, not with ink, but with thread. She doesn't need to know the answers yet. She only needs to rest. The stitcher's hands are quiet now. The sky is watching, and sleep is drawing near. By morning, the hearth is nothing but cooled embers. Outside, pale fog curls, low over cobblestone streets, blanketing the town in a silence so soft, even the roosters crow more gently. Elsha rises slowly. She always wakes before the others in the weaving hall, before the master dyer lights the kettles and the stars. She moves like a whisper, her feet bare against the chill wood, her fingers brushing a shawl around her shoulders, a shawl her grandmother once stitched with soft yellow moons. The christening cloak from Marin lies folded on her stool. She touches the fleece, soft, clean, newly carded, and around the edge of the collar, just the faintest pencil marks tracing where the stars will go. 7 stitches, 7 stars. Each one meant to bless a day of the newborn's first week. The old women say it's best to begin the cloak while the sister's crown still hangs above the birch trees. They say the thread carries more warmth when it's done before moon's turn. Elsha chooses her colors carefully. For Monday, a soft pearl grapeful beginnings. For Tuesday, faded rose tenderness, ease of breath. Wednesday's thread is deep green, for dreams. Thursday gets rust red, like hearth fire. Friday is cream. Saturday, dusk, blue gentle weather. And, for Sunday, a golden thread, fine as spider silk. She threads the first color through her needle, then sets to work. The thread slips into the wool with barely a sound. In, out. In again. Her breathing falls into rhythm with the movement. A soft inward pull, a slow exhale. The fabric rises slightly beneath her hand, like a sleeping chest, and the star takes shape. Outside, the town begins to wake. A cartwheel creaks over uneven stone. A far-off bell from the abbey tower hums one long tone. And yet, in her small corner room, Elsia is wrapped in silence, broken only by the heartbeat's soft pulse of her needle. As she works, her thoughts drift, not toward worry or noise, but to memory. She remembers when she first learned to stitch a star. She was 7 years old. Her hands were clumsy, her stitches too tight. She had cried thinking she'd ruined the wool, but Maeve had only smiled. "Stars wobble too, child," she'd said, "and yet they never fall." That night, Maeve placed a scrap of velvet in Elcha's lap, deep blue, worn at the corners, and let her practice. "Until the foxtail gleamed true?" "You'll feel it when it's right," Maeve whispered, like the sky agreeing with you. Now, years later, Elcha feels it again. That hush. That stillness. That quiet hum of something larger threading through her fingers. She finishes the 3rd star. Dreams. She smiles softly, wishing the baby the kind of dreams that smell of wild thyme and warm bread, and gazes once more through the round window. The fog has begun to lift. The rooftops now peek through like small stone boats in a sea of white mist. Smoke curls up from the baker's chimney, carrying the scent of barley flour and yeast. But there's another scent, too faint, distant, sweet, and sharp, like resin. They've been lit in the courtyard below. Soon the air will fill with the strange alchemy of madder root, nettles, and indigo foam. Soon, the apprentices will carry skeins of yarn on long poles, like banners. For now, the town is only half awake, and Elcha's needle continues its quiet work. By mid-morning, only the golden Sunday star remains. She unwinds the final thread, careful not to tug. Gold thread phrase, Isili, especially the kind spun with real guilt. This one, her grandmother had hidden in a tea tin, far back on a shelf, behind dried lemon peel and rose hips. "Save it," she said, "for something that matters. Today, it matters." Elcha threads the needle, holds the wool in her lap, and begins. The star is a spiral shape, unusual for the old designs, but Maeve had taught her this one specially. It's not a star in the sky. It's the one we hold inside. The spiral takes time. Her needle moves in slow, careful curves. The gold glints faintly in the soft light. With each stitch, Elcha feels something loosen. Not in the thread, but in her own chest. A kind of quiet opening. A space where breath can rest. And as the spiral completes, the room feels warmer, as if the fire had stirred, though no one has touched it. She ties off the thread, snips the end, and presses the finished cloak flat on her lap. 7 stars, 7 blessings, 7 quiet wishes, wrapped in wool, soft asleep. You may imagine it now. The cloak folded gently beside a crib carved from pine, the baby sleeping beneath it. A lullaby stitched into every seam. Let the thought rock gently in your mind, like a cradle swaying in a breeze. Let your breathing slow, your thoughts soften. Let yourself rest, as Elsha does now. Her fingers cooling, her eyes closing. Her work complete for this day. She. The golden star is stitched, and the wool still holds warmth. Now the air carries a new sound, the soft clatter of looms being readied in the great hall below. But Elsha stays in her quiet corner a little longer. This morning belongs to the stars, to wool and hush and memory. She wraps the finished cloak in fine muslin, tucking in a sprig of rosemary, just as Maeve always did, for blessing and for scent. When she finally steps outside, the sun is a golden haze behind the clouds. The town is awake now, but not hurried. It's a day of slow rhythms, of bread baking, and wool dyeing, and shutters being fastened against the coming rain. Elsha walks the lane quietly, past ivy-covered stones and window boxers spilling over with marigold. She carries the little bundle with both hands, and as she does, she hums. It's not a song anyone taught her, just a low, drifting tune that seems to come when she walks with finished threadwork. She doesn't even realize she's doing it until an old woman sweeping her stoop smiles and says softly, but says nothing. She likes to think the stars do sing, and maybe if she sews gently enough, listens closely enough, they hum right through her hands. She delivers the cloak to Marin, who opens the muslin wrapping with care, and presses the wool to her cheek, smiling with tears in her eyes. Warm even before it's worn. Then slips away, back through the narrow stone lanes, until she returns to the quiet of the weaving hall. Today is dye day, and though she has already stitched her stars, Elsha joins the apprentices. At the kettles, the dye yard behind the hall is strung with lines, like the ribs of a great ship. Hung on them are skeins of damp wool, reds, greens, ultras, each one slowly deepening in the morning light. Huge copper vats simmer over stone hearths, bubbling faintly. Steam rises in gentle coils, carrying the fragrance of nettle, elderberry. Elsha takes her place near the indigo pot. It is her favorite. Indigo is a strange dye. It begins as green. The yarn is soaked, and soaked again. Then lifted from the vat. And here is the magic. As the damp yarn is lifted, it changes color before their eyes. The green deepens, darkens, and becomes blue not from the dye itself, but from the air. The blue is a gift of breath. You don't dye indigo, you invite it. Elsha watches now as her fellow apprentice, Mira, lifts a hank of wool from the vat. They both hold their breath. The yarn glistens green for only a second, then slowly, like twilight settling over hills, they exhale together, smiling. It never gets old. Elsha dips her own skein. She has plans for this batch, a robe for the village scribe, embroidered with constellations, feels the weight of the wool, absorb the dye, waits, and breathes, slowly, then lifts, green, then sky. It feels like magic, but it's only time, air, and patience, much like stitching stars. Hours pass this way, in silence, in shared rhythm. By afternoon, the courtyard is hung with every hue imaginable. Lines of color sway gently in the breeze, casting shadows across the stones. It feels like standing beneath a rainbow that has chosen, for now, to rest close to the earth. Elsa steps back, wipes her damp hands on her apron, and closes her eyes for a moment. She imagines each skein as a thread of the sky, sunset, crimson. She thinks about the lost star again, that flickering point of light that never settles, always shifting, as if it is waiting for something, or someone. She wonders, could thread map it? Could color catch it? Or does it need something else? A pattern that hasn't been invented yet, a stitch never sewn, a nudge, gentle and persistent, like the tug of thread through cloth. You may rest with this thought now. Let it wander gently, like a loose thread curling on a windowsill. No need to hold it tight. Just let it drift, as the dyed yarn does, from pot to air to sky, and breathe deeply, quietly, as Elsa does. The yarns are drying, and the world has gone quiet again. Let your breathing match the rhythm of falling light, in and out, as the evening begins to fold gently over the town. By twilight, the courtyard is empty. The apprentices have gone inside, their arms full of wool, their cheeks warm from steam and laughter. Elsa lingers behind, standing beneath the crisscrossed lines of drying thread. The colors ripple slightly in the evening breeze, each one glowing faintly in the last golden light. Above her, the first stars begin to appear, faint, like blushes in the sky, just whispers at first, but growing stronger with each breath of dusk. She gazes up at them, her hands still damp, and feels the quiet settle over her again. It's a feeling she knows well now. A soft weight, not heavy, but full, the kind of quiet that listens, the kind that waits. She steps away from the lines, passing through the tall wooden doors and into the cool shadows of the weaving hall. It smells of wool and beeswax, of lavender tucked into corners, and the faint bite of oak smoke from the hearth. Elsa climbs the stair to her loft room once more. The bundle of golden thread waits there, still coiled like a sleeping sun beside her stool. She doesn't reach for it yet. Instead, she lights the small candle by her window. Its flame glows steady, a quiet guardian in the dark. She sits, not to stitch just yet. The stars are fully out now. She sees them clearly through the small round window, The fox, bold and low. The crown, bright and centered. And there, barely visible, the lost star again. Still not where it should be, still shimmering just outside the pattern. Elsa wonders, what if it isn't lost at all? What if it's waiting? She opens her grandmother's vellum scrolls, the ones tucked behind the firewood shelf, wrapped in oilcloth and bound with silk ribbon. The maps are old, frayed at the edges, but the ink still clings like memory. Tiny star dots, loops of threadwork, names written in a script too soft for quill or pen. She traces a fingertip over one of the diagrams, the layout of the heron. Beneath it, in faint silver ink, a note. Guard the rivers of thought. Where thread follows water, the stars reveal truth. She reads it again and again, until the words become sounds, and the sounds become breath. Outside, the town is silent. Even the wind has paused. In that stillness, Elsa begins to sketch. She pulls a blank square of linen from the basket beside her bed. Smooth, soft, warm from its resting place. She tacks it into her embroidery hoop, then dips a brush into a bowl of soot water and honey. A gentle ink Maeve once taught her to make when the abbey ran short of proper parchment. With slow, small strokes, she begins to map what she sees. The fox, the crown, the edge of the heron, and then the lost star. But further north tonight, and pulsing faintly like a heartbeat behind silk, she sketches its position with care, marks it with a swirl, not a dot. Something feels different about it, less like a place, and more like a door. She sets the brush aside, lets the linen dry, and leans back in her chair. The fire murmurs quietly in the hearth. The candle flickers like a sleepy eye, and Elsa's breath grows slow, slower, still. The stars begin to hum again, not in her ears, but in her chest. Not loud, just enough to guide the thread. She closes her eyes, just for a moment, and when she opens them again, she knows what to sew. Let yourself feel it now. The hush of stars above you, the stillness of linen in your lap. You don't need to move. You don't need to reach for anything. Just be here, quiet and listening. As Elsa listens, the night is not empty. It is waiting. Elsa does not sleep that night. Not fully. But she does rest in that in-between place where thoughts drift and breath moves gently with no need for direction. She dreams without dreaming, and somewhere between one breath and the next, she feels the thread again. The one that pulls softly at her ribs, not to harm, but to guide. It's morning before she opens her eyes. And even then, she does so slowly, as if afraid the stars might vanish if she moves too quickly. The fire has gone cold, but the room is still warm. The window glows with the soft gray of dawn. The linen in the hoop has dried overnight, and on it her sketched map waits, silent and still. She rises, stretches, wraps her shawl tighter. Then she opens the thread chest. Not for the usual bundles. Today she seeks the small parcel at the bottom, a scrap of thread wrapped in oiled parchment, sealed with wax-bearing mavis thistle sigil. It had never been used. Saved. For something unknown. Silvery pale. Not quite white. Not quite gray. Not quite anything. It shimmered like something between breath and snowlight. Maeve never told her what it was made from. Only that it was spun on the longest night from fleece-combed at first frost, and boiled in moon tea. A brew of violet, ash bark, and pearl powder. Elsa threads her needle with it. The thread feels warm in her fingers, as if it remembers. She begins to sew the map. She sketched. One soft star at a time. Not bold, just the quiet kind. The ones you don't see unless you're truly looking. The thread moves like wind over wheat. In, out, in, again. Each star she stitches feels like an exhale. Each curved like a whispered word. When she reaches the spot marked as the lost star, she pauses. The linen beneath her fingers feels warmer here, and her needle dips in without resistance, as if the cloth had always waited for this thread. But as a spiral, one soft curve, then another, and another still. The shape is small, but when she pulls the thread through and knots the final stitch, something in the room changes. The air feels fuller, brighter, though the candle hasn't been lit. She sits back, watches. The kind of shift a person feels in their bones before a storm arrives. Not fear, but readiness. She takes a long breath in, lets it out slowly, and sets the linen aside. Later that morning, she walks the stitched map to the abbey. Not to the priests. No. They would not understand. But to the herb wife who tends the apothecary garden behind the stone wall. Her name is Beta, and she has known silence longer than anyone Elsa has met. They only sit, side by side, among the bee balm and yarrow. The stitched cloth, resting in Beta's lap. The woman runs her fingers over the thread. She nods once. Just once. And presses her palm to Elcha's hand. No words are needed. The map speaks for itself. The star has been found. That night, Elsa does sleep. Deeply. The kind of sleep that settles into your muscles. Just the soft rhythm of her own breath. She has sewn the lost star, and it has accepted its name. Let yourself feel that stillness now. Let your thoughts rest. Like folded cloth on a cedar shelf. You are held. Not by arms, but by pattern. By memory. by thread and breath and sky. There is nothing more to reach for. Only this moment. Only this calm. Our story drifts on, just as the wind curls softly through the alleyways of the old quarter in Elsie's town. And this morning, it carries with it something new. News. But not the kind that travels in parchment or ink. This is the kind of knowing that moves through glances, through quiet nods from vendor to vendor, through the shift of birds nesting high in the steeple eaves. The old brass bell of the abbey does not ring. Not this day. Instead, a hush settles over the streets, a reverent kind of silence, as if the town itself is holding its breath. Elsa walks with a quiet purpose, a bundle beneath her arm. Not wrapped in velvet or ribbon, just simple flax cloth, folded once, tied with a length of indigo thread. Inside, the cloak. The map complete. The stitches firm. The thread gleaming like quiet frost in moonlight. But more than that, there's a presence in the folds. Not something seen, something felt. Elsa doesn't need to name it. She simply knows. The cloak remembers where the stars belong, and it holds them now. She walks past the tanner's yard, past the square where the well sings with every drawn pail, past the carved wooden sign of the baker's oven, still warm with morning loaves, and she turns down a narrow path, one most villagers ignore. It leads to the river's edge, where a stone pier reaches out into the mist. There, beneath the drooping branches of a weeping ash, a man waits. His cloak is worn, and his boots are patched, but his eyes, they are the color of the deep sky before snow, and they hold stories too old to be told. He nods to Elsa, not surprised to see her, not needing explanation. He holds out his hands, and she lays the bundle gently into his palms. Together, in silence, they unfold it. The air shifts again, just as it had in her room when the final stitch was pulled. The wind stills, the water stills, even the birds pause. The man traces the constellation spirals, his fingers reverent, not worshipping. He speaks at last, and his voice is soft as moss on stone. They said it was lost, he murmurs, but the stars are never truly gone, just waiting to be seen again. And when he pulls the cloak around his shoulders, the fabric falls like night itself. The stitched map lies perfectly against his back, shimmering subtly, not glowing, not magical, just awake. The man turns to leave, but he does not step onto the road. No, he walks to the edge of the river, and where the stones meet water, there is a small boat, just large enough for one. He climbs in, pulls the cloak tighter, and as the boat begins to drift downstream, Elsa sees that the stars on his back, they are mirrored in the sky above, one constellation in the heavens, and one sewn below, aligned, whole again. She stands there long after the boat disappears into the fog. Long after the water forgets its ripples. Long after the moment has passed. And still, she feels no sadness. Only the quiet certainty that some things are meant to be sewn into memory. Some threads. That night, Elsa lights only one candle. She doesn't need more. Its small, golden flame is enough to cast shadows of constellations across her room. She gathers the scraps from the floor, the unused thread, the thimble, the empty hoop. She places them gently in the wooden chest and closes the lid. Then she climbs into bed, and the pillow beneath her cheek feels like cloud-stuffed cotton. The blanket is weightless, woven not of wool but of breath and calm and memory. And above her bed, on the ceiling's wooden beams, tiny points of light dance, not from stars, not from spells, but from something else, from a life lived with intention, with quiet hands, with reverence for pattern, for place, for sky, and as sleep drifts toward her, she hears one last whisper in her thoughts. You are safe now. The world has been sewn gently shut for the night. There is nothing more to do, no more to be. Let your breath fall steady. Let your limbs soften. Let yourself be held, as if wrapped in a cloak of your own, one stitched from dusk and lullabies. Sleep comes on, quiet thread. You only need to follow. Days pass, slowly, like the tide pulling back lace-stitched sea foam. The rhythm of the village settles again, but not quite the same. Elsa's hands still move with purpose, still spin the wheel, still sort the dyed threads by hue. And wait. But a quiet hush lives beneath her work now, as if the cloth itself is listening. As if each spool carries the hush of starlight, and each stitch remembers something. The people who come to the shop speak more softly now. Even the merchant from the northern coast, who once barked out his orders like a ship's captain, leans in gently when he asks, "Do you have any sky-colored wool?" And Ilse nods. Of course she does. Sky color depends on the time of day, she always says. And on who's looking up, there is peace in this rhythm. In the way seasons turn like in the creak of the old stool, the hush of scissors through cloth, the warm sigh of the fire behind her. And always her grandmother's voice lingers like a soft shawl across her shoulders. Some stars don't shine above. Child, grandmother used to say. Some choose to be stitched into the lives of quiet people. People like us. One afternoon, the wind returns a different kind of wind. Not cold, not harsh, but insistent. It pushes open the shutters, rustles the parchment pattern sheet, sends a single blue thread skittering across the floor, and Elsa feels it in her chest, that soft blooming tug of a new beginning. Pulls her shawl around her shoulders and walks, not toward the market, not toward the dye house, not toward the place by the river, toward the hill that sits just beyond the town's edge, the one with the ruined stone watchtower. Its top long since tumbled, its purpose forgotten. But not by Elsha. She climbs the hill slowly. The grass is long here, and dotted with tiny wildflowers that close at dusk. Their petals sleep. At the top, she places her hand on the weather-worn stone. It feels warm from the sun's parting kiss. And beneath her fingertips, a memory. This is where her grandmother once brought her. When she was small, when constellations were stories, and each star had a name like a friend. She sits, lets her cloak wrap around her legs, and leans back to watch the sky bloom open. The first stars appear quietly, politely, asking permission before entering. She whispers their names, as she was taught. Valentis, the threader's eye. Green-tinged star nestled in the shoulder of the weaver's arc. Then comes Orsith and blue Lyrian. And finally, the arc of Fairness Circle. A soft halo of 5 stars that appear only on the clearest nights. Elsha closes her eyes. The hill is utterly still, except for a sound. The softest click, like the drop of a needle. Like a loom's gentle reset. She opens her eyes, and beside her, someone stands there. Eyes pale as pearl, hair wrapped in a coil, the color of ash, and a thimble glinting on her thumb. Elsha doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. The woman kneels, pulls something from her satchel. It is an embroidery hoop, but unlike any Elsha has ever seen. The frame is silver, delicately etched with symbols from the old tongue, the one only used in the time before bells. And across it, half-stitched already, is a star map. But not of the sky above, of a sky yet to come. Elsha watches as the woman threads a needle. It catches the light, not metal. No, it looks like it was carved from moon bone. The woman begins to stitch, slowly, rhythmically. Each movement pulls the needle through the cloth, making a sound so soft it could be mistaken for a breath. And Elsha, she begins to hum. She doesn't know the tune, but her voice knows it. It's the lullaby her grandmother once hummed. On long winter nights, when snow hushed the streets and even the crows slept with their beaks tucked deep, and together the woman and Elsha sit under the stars, one stitching. Less, but of what will be sown next. So rest now, gentle dreamer. Let your breath move like thread through the tapestry of night. There are maps still to stitch, constellations yet unnamed, and stories waiting in the quiet corners of candlelit rooms. But not now. Now is for sleep. You are safe. You are warm. And the stars, they are already watching over you. The next morning, the hilltop is empty. No sign of thread, or hoop, or moonbone needle. Just a flattened patch in the grass and a shimmer in the dew. Like someone had embroidered the meadow itself with silver breath. Elsa walks back to town with quiet feet and thoughtful eyes. The sounds of morning rise around her, sparrows gossiping in the thatched eaves, a distant rooster clearing its throat, the soft clink of bread ovens being opened. But in her mind, the stars are still stitching themselves together, whispering messages in a language older than stone. That afternoon, she opens the bottom drawer of her workbench, the one no customer ever sees, the one where her grandmother's embroidery sat unfinished, not because it was forgotten, but because it waited. Waited for her. The cloth is soft with time. The lines faint, drawn in a pale ink that smells faintly of lavender and iron. But she recognizes the shape immediately. Not constellations from above, but from memory, from dreams. A needle slips ickly between her fingers. The same one her grandmother used, bone-handled. The thimble fits her thumb like it always belonged there. And she begins to stitch. Not for customers, not for coin, but for something deeper. Each night, after the shop shutters close, Elsa lights one candle. Sometimes she hears the wind stir. Sometimes she hums without thinking. And sometimes the needle glows just faintly, just long enough for her to wonder if the silver thread she thought she imagined was, in fact, time, like thread, passes slowly. Spring gives way to summer. Then autumn, with its amber leaves and scent of cloves and hearth smoke. On one particular evening, a traveler enters the shop. Tall, cloaked, eyes like dusk settling on water. He carries no satchel, no cart, no coin purse. Only a bundle wrapped in soft linen. He speaks little. Only this: I was told you stitch stories into cloth, that you know the way stars pass through hands. Elsa nods, though the words are curious. The travailer unwraps the linen. Inside is a cloak, ancient, its edges frayed, its dye faded to a ghost of blue. But across its back, stitched in tiny golden thread, a map, not of the sky, but of paths once taken. A journey traveled long ago, and in the center, a hole, not torn, but worn, like something precious had been carried there and now was gone. He places it on the counter gently, as if offering a memory, and whispers, "Can you finish it?" Elsa touches the edge of the cloth. Her fingers tingle. The threads hum softly, like bees asleep in a hive. She nods. not because she knows how, but because her hands do. She tells him to return in 3 days, but she knows it will take exactly 30 nights. That's how long the waxing moon needs to become full. The same moon that hung above the hill the night she met the woman with the silver hoop. The threads resist at first, old and stiff from years of waiting, but soon they soften, yield, sing beneath the needle, and as the final night arrives, she pulls the last thread through, tying it with a knot so small it might be breath itself. She does not add a name, only a symbol, one, her grandmother used long ago. The traveler returns, just as dawn stretches her golden arms across the village rooftops. He sees the cloak laid out before him and closes his eyes. When he opens them again, they shine with starlight. No words are spoken, but he leaves something behind. A single coin, not of silver or gold, but of glass. Elsha places it in the bottom drawer, next to her grandmother's hoop, next to the bundle of threads that only appear when the wind carries a certain scent. And life continues, as it always does. But now, the villagers say the cloaks Elsha makes are different. They say wearing one brings restful dreams, or that the night air smells sweeter, or that certain paths become easier to walk. And though Elsha never says a word, she always smiles when she hears such things. Because she knows some threads are woven not with wool, but with wonder. And now, dear listener, your eyes may grow heavy, your thoughts may soften, like clouds drifting across a dusk-lit sky. You are warm, and like the stars stitched into cloaks and dreams, you are held gently. Sleep now, and let the thread of rest weave you into the quiet. The seasons tip forward again, as naturally as the tilt of a spindle. In winter, Elsha works beside a hearth so warm, it's crackling. Outside, snow gathers on cobblestones and lintel, and the streets are quiet after sundown, as though the village itself has drawn up under a blanket of sleep. But within her shop, a different kind of warmth blooms. Elsha has begun keeping a journal, a quiet thing, just a few soft pages bound with thread, tucked inside her sewing box. On each page, she sketches a constellation, not one seen above, but one felt. She names them not for gods or beasts, but for moments, the thread between sisters, the lantern that waited, the cloak that chose its wearer. Each drawing is followed by a line of stitches, as though the ink and thread need one another to tell the whole truth. She finds, curiously, that when she writes or sews beside the hearth, not brighter, just more alert, as if they too are listening. One night, as frost kisses the glass panes and the wind rattles the old shutters, a tapping comes at her door. Soft, rhythmic, not urgent. She wraps a shawl around her shoulders and opens it to find a young girl no older. She wears no cloak, only a too-thin dress, and boots laced in haste. Her cheeks are red from wind, her eyes wide and shining. Before Elsha can ask, the girl holds out her hand. In it, a scrap of parchment, crumpled and singed at the corner. On it, a rough drawing. Not a star map, but a symbol Elsha knows too well. Her grandmother's sigil. The one she stitched onto the traveler's cloak. The one hidden in the base of her embroidery box. She brings the child inside, warms her fingers with honeyed milk, blankets her in a patchwork quilt that smells faintly of rosemary and cedar, and asks, very gently. The child says nothing for a long moment, just sips her milk. Then, my brother followed the lights into the forest. 3 nights ago, he hasn't come back. She points to the symbol. Someone left this in my shoes this morning. I think it was meant for you. Elsha's breath is quiet, not held, not forced, but quiet. The kind of breath you take when something larger than you enters the room. She looks again at the parchment, not just a sigil, but a clue. Beneath the mark, just barely visible, are thread lines, wound-like paths. And suddenly, the forest map unravels in her mind. That night, Elsha packs her grandmother's needle. 3 candles made of beeswax and bay leaf, and the book of constellations she's begun. She tucks the girl safely with the baker's wife, a kind soul who once wore Elsha's cloak to her wedding. Then, Elsha follows the parchment into the trees. The forest beyond the village is quiet in the way stories are quiet. Not because there's nothing in them, but because every sound has meaning. Snow hushes her footfalls. Branches move like old hands blessing her path. And here and there, threads appear. Thin, silvery, caught between brambles, dangling from hollow oaks. Looped delicately through thorns. She follows them. The candle in her hand burns low, but true. Time becomes unimportant. There is only following, only trusting the pattern. Just when the wind shifts, carrying with it the faintest scent of time and ash, breath. Not wind, not deer, but a boy's breath, soft, frayed, like someone trying not to cry in the dark. Elsha steps into a clearing, and there he is, curled beneath a tree older than stone, wrapped in a cloak too large for his shoulders. He looks up. Startled at first, but then his face relaxes, as though he already knows who she is. I saw them, he whispers. They were sewing the stars. Elsha kneels beside him, presses the last candle into his palm, lights it with care. They do that, she whispers back, especially when someone remembers how to look. She guides him gently back, toward the village, following the silver thread, until the last of it vanishes with the rising dawn. When they return, the girl leaps from the baker's stoop into her brother's arms, and for a long time, they simply hold on. Elsha smiles, and tucks the parchment scrap into her journal. right beside the page titled "The Stitch That Led Us Home." Now, dear dreamer, let your body relax once more, like branches bowed with snow, like a needle resting in its case. You are safe, and you are exactly where the stars meant you to be. Sleep gently now. Days return to their gentle rhythm. Elsa begins stitching again. But now her work feels different. Less like craft, and more like listening. She wakes before dawn to the soft rustle of wind and the slow, patient tick of frost forming on the window. With every stitch she draws, she hears echoes of her grandmother's voice, of the boy's breath beneath the stars, of the forest speaking in thread. And always, 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 the pull of constellations, not yet sown. One morning, as pale light spills over the thatched rooftops, a parcel arrives. Left without a knock, wrapped in oiled cloth, and sealed with wax shaped like a spindle. Inside, a bolt of deep indigo wool, so fine and rich it seems to shimmer, and a note written in looping, unfamiliar script. From the court of Denmark, Our Lady requests a cloak of dreams. Elsa's fingers still. Denmark. A castle spoken of only in winter tales. A place said to appear only when the stars align. No one in the village has ever seen it, but every child has heard the stories. Castles that breathe like mountains. Halls lit by starlight falling through crystal windows. A queen with a crown of frost, who speaks only in whispers. Elsa rereads the note. Elsa rereads. L. She takes it as a request not for warmth, but for meaning. That evening, she begins. She sets a hoop beneath her candlelight, threads her grandmother's finest silver needle, and draws the first line. But not with chalk with memory. She begins with the thread that found the boy, then the symbol from the parchment, then the stars from her journal. She embroiders in layers, midnight blue, charcoal gray, a single strand of red gold that glows faintly under moonlight. She doesn't sleep, not quite, only drifts in and out, swaying with the rhythm of thread and time. Seated before it was an old woman, older than any elder Elsa had ever seen. Her hands worked slowly, threading, pulling, knotting, but each movement. She did not look up, but she spoke. Elsia, granddaughter of Mira, thread singer, dream weaver. Come sit. Elsa sat. Not on a stool, but on a mat of moss, woven through with starlight and lavender. The boy remained behind her, silent now, watching. The old woman passed her a needle, long and carved from bone, its eye wide enough to hold threads of light. "Stitch," she said. Elsia took the needle in trembling fingers. The loom before her seemed impossibly vast. Where would she begin? "Start with what you know," the woman whispered. So Elsa did. She stitched the village, the bakery's warmth, the child with the crooked smile, the black cat that slept on the windowsill. She stitched the boy, the night they met, the hush between them. She stitched the cloak, the stranger, the letters that followed, and with each stitch, the world around her seemed to hum in recognition. The threads of the loom moved with her, not passively, but as though they were alive, responding. But the woman was gone. Only her shawl remained, folded neatly at the loom's base. The boy placed a hand on Elsa's shoulder. "She left you her place," he said. "Why? Because you listened." Time after that became quiet again. Elsa returned to the village, but sometimes she disappeared for days. No one asked where. They knew. Some nights, the villagers would look up and see new stars in the sky. Small ones, soft ones, forming shapes. They recognized a spindle, a black cat. They'd smile and say, "Elsa's stitching again." And sometimes, on very quiet nights, you might see her too. If you look out your window just before sleep, if you let your thoughts drift into that hush between breaths, you may see her walking along a field with thread trailing behind her, stitching stars into the very air. Now, dear one, close your eyes and feel the warmth of the cloak Elsa stitched, just for dreamers like you. Let it settle on your shoulders. Let its threads remind you that every moment is a constellation waiting to be named. Breathe in and out, slowly, softly. You are safe. You are part of the pattern. You are gently drifting between stars and story. Sleep well. One evening, long after the moon had risen, Elsa sat by the hearth, a steaming cup in her hands, and her grandmother's old shawl around her shoulders. The fire crackled low, casting shadows on the wooden beams above. Half remembered, half invited. The village was asleep. But Elsa felt something stir. Not outside, within, a tug in the chest, like thread being drawn through soft cloth. Not painful, just persistent. She set her cup down, gathered her journal, and walked outside. The air was chilled, but not harsh. The stars, bright and scattered, like drops of ink on velvet. And there, at the edge of the field, older now, but unmistakable, the same dark eyes, the same quiet presence. He turned as she approached, smiled, as though no time had passed. "You've stitched the sky," he said, "and now it's time you learned what lies beyond it." Elsha tilted her head. "Beyond it." He pointed upward, but not just to the stars, to the space between them. "Not all maps are made with thread and ink," he whispered. "Some are made with silence and steps and trust." Then he held out his hand, and she took it. They walked together beyond the hedgerow, through the frost-lined grass, into the woods. The trees did not seem cold or eerie. They bent gently toward the pair, their branches shifting like welcoming arms. A soft, shimmering light began to guide them, not from torches, or maybe something older. "Where are we going?" Elsha asked, though her voice was hushed, as though afraid to disturb the hush around them. The boy looked ahead, to where the star maps are born. After a time that felt both long and short, they reached a clearing. In its center, an enormous loom, taller than any house, wider than the village square. Its frame was carved from a tree that must have lived for centuries. Its threads shimmered with colors Elsha had no words for. Silver that flickered like memory, blue that rippled like breath, deep black that was an absence. And you might feel, very softly, that something in your chest is being sewn back together in silver thread. Now, gentle soul, let your own breath deepen, in and out. You are safe. You are held in the weave of the world. Sleep now, under the cloak of stars stitched just for you. You are part of the pattern. You are part of the dream. After that winter, a new rhythm took root in the village. The old cloaks Elsha stitched weren't just for warmth anymore. They became heirlooms. Each one held a pattern stitched with care, some visible to the eye, some meant only for the heart to recognize. And if someone asked, "What does this thread mean?" Elsha might smile softly and say, "It means the same thing it meant to the stars that spring." She opened the shuttered shop next to the old bell tower, the one that had been closed since the carpenter passed. She polished its windows, dusted the beams, and laid soft linen over the tables. Above the door, she hung a sign, the map within the thread. It wasn't just a shop. Villagers came, not to place orders, but to speak. They'd sit across from Elsie and share memories in hushed voices. A sister who sang in the fields, a lullaby their mother used to hum. Elsha would listen, always listening. And then, a few days later, a cloak would arrive at their doorstep stitched with colors they hadn't worn in years. Symbols they'd forgotten they remembered, and threads that shimmered in moonlight like dew. But one visitor was different. He came on a quiet Tuesday, in a dark gray cloak, with boots worn thin by miles of travel. He didn't sit down, didn't speak, just placed a piece of parchment on the table and slid it toward her. It was brittle, but the ink was still clear. An old star map, the kind once used by sailors and wandering monks. But this one was unfinished. Dozens of constellations were marked, only by faint dotted lines. No names, no meaning. Just potential. Elsha looked up. The man said nothing. Then he pointed to a constellation in the upper corner. 3 stars, bent like a shepherd's crook. I see this in my dreams, he whispered. Elsha's fingers brushed the edge of the map. It pulsed warm, as if the parchment itself remembered something too ancient for words. She nodded. That night, by firelight, she pulled her softest wool across her lap and started with the crook. Not as a shepherd's staff this time, but as a curved boat riding gently across a midnight sea. Then came the rest. A net of stars beneath it, flickering like fish, and a compass of vines, twisting towards something unseen. She didn't deliver it. Instead, she carried it to the edge of the woods, where the trees still remembered the boy and the loom and the glowing threads. She left it on a flat stone beneath a budding sycamore. When she returned the next morning, it was gone. And on her work table, a shell, small, spiral-shaped, but when she held it to her ear, she didn't hear the sea. She heard a hum, a gentle, rising tone, like the pull of thread through cloth. And then a voice. That summer, the fields bloomed in ways no one had seen before. Poppies in rows, shaped like stars. Lavender curling into spirals. Children began naming constellations in the sky after stories Elsha had stitched. The cat of smoke, the thread between hearts. The elders didn't mind. They simply nodded and said, "The stars change with the storytellers." She still stitched, still listened, but her needle began to slow. Not from weariness, but because the threads were becoming lighter, finer, more like wind than wool. And one night, as she watched the sky through her shop's window, she whispered to herself, "There's one last thread." She rose, gathered her grandmother's shawl, wrapped it around her shoulders, then stepped into the night. And if you walk the meadow paths today, when mist curls low over the grass, you may see her. Not in body, but in shape. A shimmer in the morning dew, a hush in the leaves, a warmth behind your ribs, remembered. Some say she became a star herself. Others say she became the needle, forever moving, forever stitching the dreams of the world into the great, soft sky. Let yourself rest now. You, too, are stitched into the pattern. You, too, are seen by the stars. Sleep beneath the cloak of dreams. You are safe. you are held. Our story drifts now, not forward, but inward, into the stillness that follows a journey. The quiet in the space between heartbeats, the sigh of a field that has given all its grain. Elsha's shop, though empty, still seems to glow. Visitors still leave small offerings at its doorstep, a sprig of thyme, a button shaped like a sun, a letter written in looping, childlike script. No one claims the shop. No one dares to move in. It belongs, now, to the stories it once held. And in the rafters, if the wind is just right, you can hear the faint pull of thread as if someone, somewhere, is still stitching. Far from the village, on a cliff that cradles the sea, stands a weathered stone abbey. There, a scribe named Alice copies ancient texts. She writes in silence, except when she hums soft, melodic fragments that seem to rise from her fingertips. One evening, as twilight brushed the sky in lavender and slate, Alice found a bundle left in the library's alcove. It was wrapped in wool, the color of fog, and stitched with a single pattern, a thread crossing from star to star, in a spiral that never ended. Inside the bundle, a scroll. The parchment smelled of rose oil and ash, and though the writing was unfamiliar, her hands knew it. They moved across the ink, as if guided by memory older than words. It was a map, not of roads, but of stories, of places the stars remembered, of people forgotten only by time. At the top was a name, embroidered in gold: Elsha, daughter of thread. Night after night, Alice studied the scroll, each symbol unfurled into a dream. She saw the bell tower boy and the smoky cat, the grandmother weaving starlight in her rocking chair, the man with the shepherd's crook constellation. And slowly, she began to write. Not in the old style, not the way she was taught, but in soft strokes, with words shaped like wind, and endings that never closed. She compiled the stories into a bound volume, wrapped in leather dyed with elderberry and soot. On the cover, a single silver thread. She named it the map within the thread, in honor of the shop she had never seen, but somehow always known. That book now rests in the Abbey's highest shelf, though sometimes, when the moon is full, it's found on the desk below, opened to a story that no one remembers writing. And always, beside the book, a single thread, still warm. Time passed. Villages grew. The old loom in the woods was swallowed by ivy and root. The bell tower sank into stone, but the stars, they stitched on. And those who listened, those who dreamed with a needle in hand or ink on their skin, but beyond, as if they, too, were being gathered into the great embroidery of sleep and story. You may have felt it once in a dream, or when looking at a pattern you couldn't explain. A knowing, a warmth, a thread you couldn't see but couldn't let go. That was Elsa. That was her grandmother. That was the loom, the stars, the whispering cat, the bellmaker's echo, the boy and his smoky threads. That was the stitch between memory and magic. Now, as you rest, feel it too, that gentle pull behind your ribs. Not a weight, but a quiet comfort. The reminder that you, too, are part of the map. Your story, too, has been woven in. Let yourself drift. You are remembered. You are threaded into everything. You are held. Let the night deepen. Let your thoughts unfurl like soft skeins of wool. Let the hush of the loom and the slow spin of the stars guide you now, to the quietest sleep, to the dream that remembers your name. In the quiet hollows of the world, where lamps burn low and windows glow amber, the story of Ilse still lingers. Not as pages, not even as cloth, but as feeling, as hush, as comfort passed down in needlepoint lullabies and bedtime cloaks brushed with lavender and lore. In a town by the river called Dolinshire, where the waters moved slow and thick with moss, there lived an old toymaker named Hiram. He carved dreams from birchwood and whispered lullabies into every joint. But at night, when his hands were tired and his fire low, he would draw a woolen blanket around his shoulders, a blanket stitched with stars, its edges frayed, its patterns half faded, but its warmth never dulled. He didn't know who made it. It had come to him in his youth, left in a basket at the foot of his door, on a night when snow dusted the cobblestones like sugar on a tart. He kept it all these years, because when he wrapped it around himself, he dreamed in constellations, and always woke with a new toy idea waiting on his workbench, as if whispered from the stars. One winter, a traveler from the coast wandered. She was quiet, with a lopsided braid and a pack of spices from distant lands. She bought nothing but bartered a story for a bowl of broth, and in that story, Elsa's name appeared, woven gently into a tale of spinning wheels and moonlit rivers, of a loom that sang only under starlight. Hiram, by then, had gone nearly deaf, but he felt the name, felt it hum in his bones. That night, he sat by his fire, wrapped in the old wool cloak, and for the first time, he noticed that some of the threads, the ones woven into the tail of the stitched fox and the curve of the starry antlers. He slept long that night and dreamed of a village he'd never seen, with shutters painted sky blue and a small shop that smelled of pine resin. And inside a girl with thread in her braids and the stars in her gaze. She smiled at him, handed him a wooden needle, and whispered, "You've always been part of it. Now stitch what you see." He awoke with dawn on his cheek, and from that day forward Hiram's toys changed. He began to carve small animals with constellations on their backs. He wove tiny cloaks for dolls, each lined with moon phases and clouds. He didn't advertise, but somehow the children knew. Parents from far-off towns began to send letters. Do you have one of the dreams? Can I order a fox with the 7 sisters on its tail? He didn't know how they knew, but he smiled. Each night, the cloak stayed wrapped around his shoulders, and each morning, his hands moved without question. Elsewhere, along the southern coast, a group of traveling singers known as the Lavender Men began to perform a lullaby with no known origin. It started with the sound of scissors snipping, followed by soft humming, and ended in silence, where each listener heard only what they needed to hear. No one wrote it down. It simply passed from voice to voice, like a thread through many fingers. And always, after each performance, the singers would leave a small token behind, a thimble, a strand of blue wool, or a single shining star sewn into a slip of muslin. In this way, she unraveled into story, into sound, into objects held close before sleep. And in the pause before dreaming, in that velvet hush, just after the candles snuff, her spirit whispers, "Stitch gently, sleep softly, all is remembered." You, dear listener, now drift within the same embroidery. You are a part of the pattern, a thread crossing gently through the cloth of stories, from hand to hand, from heart to heart. Your dreams tonight may carry you to bell towers and candlelit looms. 2 foxes with starry fur and cats who read from books stitched in silver. You may forget them by morning, but their peace will remain, woven quietly into your breath, into your sleep, into the softest folds of your soul. Let yourself float now. Let the silence stitch you into rest. You've come home. You've always been part of the map. And the stars remember you. There is a legend in a coastal abbey where the sea mists curl over stone each dawn that says, if you sleep beneath a star-stitched cloth, you will dream not of the past or the future, but of what the sky remembers for you. And what is remembered never truly ends. In that abbey's candlelit library, tucked between psalters and herbal tomes, there lies a page pressed with faint golden thread, not ink, not quill, thread. It forms the shape of a fox. One and a wheel of stars. No one knows how it got there. It's not catalogued, but when the young scribes dozing near it stir in their chairs, they say they smell beeswax, hear humming, and feel as if someone gently touched their shoulder and whispered, "Sleep a little longer." You are walking through that quiet abbey, your footsteps muffled on the stone. The air smells of vellum and candle smoke, and outside the waves hush against the cliff edge. Like lullabies being whispered back into the sea, you carry nothing, only the warmth of the cloak around your shoulders, a familiar one. Old wool, soft at the edges, its stitching faint, but glowing ever so slightly when the light bends just right. You pass under archways, past a monk asleep with a quill in his hand, past a window where ivy clutches the sill, and into a chamber filled with tapestries, maps, sky charts drawn with peacock ink, and crushed at the center of the room stands a loom, but no one is at it. Just a single thread trailing off its edge, as if waiting for you. You walk closer, you pick it up, and for a moment, only a moment, the path you walked to get here, the faces of those who stitched before you, and a name, Elsha. And then, as dreams do, it slips softly away, like mist across your shoulders, like sleep wrapping its arms around you. You don't need to hold on. You only need to rest, because the thread holds you. And in the waking world, in a cottage, a tower, a farm, or a ship's cabin, someone else perhaps even now finds a scrap of cloth, a carved toy, a star in their dream, and wonders why it feels so familiar. Why it feels like home. Why they want to hum a tune they never learned, and so something they've never seen before. It's because of you. You are now part of the story, too. A keeper of constellations. A dreamer with needlepoint fingers. A stitcher of silence. So close your eyes now, gentle soul. Feel the final flick of thread pass through the cloth. Feel it tug and settle. Perfect. Complete. The map has been drawn. The fire is low. The night is whole. And you, soft listener, are finally home.